Hi, hello everybody. This is International Master Asaf Givon here, and today we're going to discuss a new topic. The topic is how to decide on which side to castle in chess. So a lot of the times we are presented with a situation that we are after the opening, after we developed some pieces, and we have the possibility to castle, and sometimes I guess it happens to most of us that we start to wonder whether we should castle short or castle long. So in this video I'm going to present a couple of examples, some of them of very strong players, some of them from the amateur level, and I'm going to present a couple of important principles of this topic, so it would be easier for you to decide in the future where to castle. So this is the first example. This is actually from a game of Magnus Carlsen, the reigning world champion with white. This game was actually played, he was quite younger than he is now. He was maybe 13 or 14 when this game was played, but he was already a very strong player. It's white to move, it's move number 12. And now white is presented with the question of where should he castle. So obviously both are possible, so you might stop the video for yourself and try to think where would you castle instead of Magnus. So Magnus chose to play long castle in this case. So why did he choose to do long castle? First of all, in general, this is principle number 1. When let's say the D file is open, so a lot of the time it's very tempting to castle long, because in this way you immediately bring up your rook straight into the game. So now you see that the rook on d1 is already situated very actively on d1 on the open file. If white were to play short castle, so the rook on f1 is not very well placed, and he will need to move it on the next move probably to e1 in order to put it on the open file and to spend one more tempo. So by castling long, white is speeding up his development, because on the next move, after black-white played the move queen to d7, the rook from h1 coming straight into the game to e1, and is putting a lot of pressure on the bishop on e7 and also looking at the black king on e8. So we see a very nice situation here for white. All of his pieces are developed, all of his minor pieces and his heavy pieces, and now he is completely ready for the forthcoming battle, whereas black is kind of a little bit stuck with his king in the center. The game progressed with king d8. Black would very much like to play long castle by himself here, because short castle is not legal. But this is actually met with a nice tactical shot here, pawn to g4. So the main point that the bishop cannot move from g6, because then white will play his bishop to e6 and it would trap the black queen. So black needs to take on g4, and now comes the second nice move in this variation, which is rook takes e7, queen takes e7, and now white is using the fact that the knight on f6 is pinned to take the bishop on g4 with a check on the king on c8, and white is winning material. So black chose to play king d8, hoping that his king would stay in the center for a while, but as we can see, all of white's pieces are very nicely concentrated in the center of the board, especially his rooks and his queen. And Magnus is actually very swift here to punish his opponent. So can you try to find the best move for white here? So Magnus played actually rook takes bishop, queen takes rook, and then queen to f4, double attacking the bishop on f5, and now the rook is ready to take the pawn on d6 with a check. So white sacrificed the exchange, but now he has a very strong attack. After bishop d7, white played knight to e4, d5, knight takes f6, h6, bishop h4, g5. So at the moment white has two pieces for the rook and a very strong attack, but black kind of counted on this move g5 with a double attack on the queen and the bishop. So but white actually saw one move further and saw that here he can very simply play queen to d4, and black was forced to resign, because if black takes the bishop, then white takes the pawn on d5 with a double attack on the rook on h8 and the queen on e7. So a very nice attacking game by Carlsen, but the main point I really wanted to present here is this, if you remember. So when you want to speed up your development, to develop more quickly and put your rook immediately in the game, and the d file is open, of course, it's a lot of the times a very smart idea to castle long. Okay, let's move to the next example. So next example is also from a very high profiled game. So with the white pieces is no other than Wesley So. I think today is the second highest rated player in the world. So this was a relatively recent game from 2016. He played at the US Championship, and it's white to play. Black castled here, and now it's white to play. And the question is whether white should play just short castle, which is a very sensible move, or should he play a move with the queen, let's say queen to c2, with the idea to castle long. So what would you do here? So here Wesley played queen to c2, first of all gaining a tempo, because now white is simply threatening to take the knight on f6, followed by bishop takes h7, wins a pawn for white. So black was forced to play h6. And now this is my second, let's say, tip for you, is that sometimes if you have the possibility to a bit postpone your castling in order to make a useful move like queen to c2, and keeping the option of both castling, it's a very, let's say, it's a psychologically a very nice weapon, because your opponent doesn't know in which direction you would castle, and you kind of keep all of the options flexible for yourself. So for example, in this position Wesley could sit and choose where he wants to castle, but only when he has these two options. So it's in general a good idea to have both options open. But now, as we already know from the previous example, we see that the d file is open. White wants to accelerate his development, so it definitely chose to castle long, also putting some X-ray attack on the queen on d8 by the rook on d1. So black played queen a5, and as the game progressed, it was very clear that white did the right decision to castle long, because later on he initiated a very strong attack on the king side, whereas his king was completely safe here on b1. No attacking chances for black here. You see that white is beautifully centralized here with his pieces, and the attack did not actually did occur very soon. So black took this pawn on g2, which was a very poisonous pawn. Now the g file is open for the white's pieces. Wesley played rook to g1, attacking the bishop, and the bishop went back. So we see that in this position, white has a very strong concentration of pieces which are aiming towards the king on g8. His bishop's looking this way, his rook on g1, his knight on e5. Just beautiful centralization of white's pieces. So of course it's a bit off topic. We're not talking here about how to attack your enemy king, but once again for you, if you want to try to find the best continuation here for white that Wesley actually found in the game, you are more than welcome. So Wesley played the spectacular double blow here. He played knight takes f7. The king was forced to take his knight, and then the rook takes pawn on g7. So he sacrificed both his rook and his knight, but now his queen is joining the attack with the gain of tempo on the bishop, and now the king is completely exposed and he has no defending pawn left that he had before, and all of the black's pieces are so far away from the defense that they just cannot come in time to help him. And after queen takes f2, the game did not last too long. The queen took on e7 with a check, king g8, and now the last move of the game, a very nice move. Wesley played bishop h7 check, and black resigned because if the knight takes the bishop, it's simply mate in one move in g7 on g7, and if black moves his king to h8, there is simply bishop takes knight on f6, and black is forced to give up his queen in order not to get checkmated, and he's just losing. So once again, keep up in mind this idea of delaying sometimes your castling and keeping both options open. So let's see the next example. So in the next example, it's actually one of my games. I played with the black pieces. So here it's black to move. It's move number 21. And black is once again faced with the choice whether to castle long or to castle short. So once again, I'm presenting the question to you: what would you do if you were black here? So in the game, I chose to castle long actually. So obviously black must castle at some point in the game. He cannot stay forever with his king stuck in the center, especially with those two rooks of white's situated in the center of the board. So if the center is once in the game is open, then white could have a very strong attack. So I really don't want to do this. But the reason I did not castle short in this position is that I saw that most of white's pieces are concentrated on the king side. So we see this knight on g4, perhaps ready to jump on h6 when needed. We see that the queen, the rooks, the bishop, practically almost all of white's pieces are concentrated on the king side. And on the other hand, my pieces, for example, the queen on c7, the knight on c6, are a bit far away from the king. So I was very worried that white would just start a very direct attack with the move like f5, followed by some nasty ideas with queen h6, and suddenly black is under a severe attack. So I actually chose to do long castle, and I think it was a good decision because it looked a bit risky to castle long because black does not have all of his 3 pawns defending the king like usual, But instead of the pawns which protect the king, he has a lot of pieces, the queen, the bishop, the knight, which defend him on the king's side. And once again, all of white pieces are concentrated on the other side, so there isn't really that much danger for black on this side of the board. And as the game progressed, white actually tried to create some sort of attack later on, but it was not too successful. And actually, by move number 27, we reached this position, and black already actually went into a counter attack. So you see white tried to create some weaknesses for black on the king side. He tried to open up this A file for the rook, but now it's black to move, and he had quite a simple tactic of d4, opening up this bishop, which suddenly is a monstrous piece. And after knight takes d4, knight takes g2, suddenly it was the white king which was under very severe attack. So the queen is under attack, and the bishop is eyeballing the king on h1. And the game once again did not last too long from here. White resigned a couple of moves. Just black's attack was simply irresistible. So once again, my point of this example is when your enemy is concentrating pieces on one side of the board, and he is very much ready to attack you on this side of the board. So it makes a lot of sense to castle on the other direction, so out of his let's say out of his range of pieces. So this is my third point, and the last game and my last point in a way is perhaps the most obvious one, but this was actually a very recent game that I've even witnessed myself. It was played in the same hall that I was playing. I did not play this game by myself, but some friend of mine was sitting next to me and playing this game, and he was playing with black here, and he is a decent player with 2100 rating, and his opponent was a grandmaster, a very experienced grandmaster. And it's white to move, and once again white is having these two options of castling short or castling long. So what would you do if you were white? So as I stood from my board, I was almost sure that white would castle short here, because he has a lot of defending pawns on the king side. Is a very kind of standard move, and the king is very safe on the king side, no danger for him. But suddenly probably he decided to be a bit more funky and to play long castle. He felt maybe very ambitious that the rook would be very active on the d file, as we said before. But this is a bit different situation. Here we see that after knight c6, suddenly black is threatening to play knight b4 with some double attack on the queen and the bishop. And the really main issue here that the king on c1 is extremely unsafe. So first of all, he has one pawn missing from his three defending pawns, so the c pawn was already exchanged, and the c file is very much likely to be opened in the next moves when black will take this pawn from c5 to d4. So the king is really not safe on c1 when he is situated against files which are about to be opened. So it's a bit obvious, but yeah, you want to castle on the side which is safer for your king. And we saw one example before that safe can mean that you have a lot of defending pieces on this side of the board, but it also means that you don't castle straight into open lines of your opponent, so diagonals, or in this case open files. And as the game progressed, the rest of the game is even not that much interesting. The only interesting thing to me is that the black player was an underdog in this game. He was rated much lower than his opponent, but he outplayed him in a kind of easily, because his attack was very straightforward. All of the lines were opened, and after some more moves he opened up even more lines against the king. I think by this point white already regretted castling along very much. We see that black already have 2 open files against the white king, while white has 0 open files against the black king, so he's completely out of counterplay. So after rook e8, knight g3, bishop e5, the game progressed, but white was just beyond salvation by this point. Black is just attacking him while he cannot attack back, so it's just playing football where only one team can score a goal. So yeah, after rook d2, couple of more moves, black just developing a very strong attack, and just look how clumsy the king looks on b1. Just imagine how much safer the king would be if he would be situated on g1, where he has these 3 protecting pawns behind him, in front of him rather. So I will just leave you to find the final move of the game. So here it's black to move. Try to find, this was the last move of the game, after which white resigned. So black played here actually queen d4, which is a nice move, using this spin on the b file, threatening queen a1 checkmate. And white understood that his position is already too difficult to handle, and he just resigned, and quite deservingly. So when you castle, obviously maybe even the first question that you need to ask yourself is my king really safe here? Does he have enough defending pawns? Does he have enough pieces defending him? Does the enemy pieces have open files or open diagonals against my king? Should I be very careful about it? So these are a very important question that you should ask yourself before you castle. So thank you very much for watching. This was a short clip about where should you castle. Hope you learned something. See you next time. Bye bye.